Now let's go to section 4.2, which is discussing the financial markets. So now we finished talking about the labor markets, so forget about that. Not everything, okay? But right now, put it to the side. We're going to focus on financial markets. So financial markets are still going to be following the laws of demand and supply. Basically, because this goes up, that's going to change the quantity, right? So the price goes up, changes the quantity. Demand, higher prices, lower quantity. Supply, higher prices, higher quantity. Same idea. But now that we're talking about financial capital, we're going to be changing the quantity part of it and the price. Like there's a different name for it. The idea is the same, but the word we're going to be using is different. So when we talk about financial markets and financial capital, you're probably thinking capital was machines. Yeah, I like to say capital is machines, and some people think of capital as money. Financial capital, that's money. Financial capital is an economic resource measured in terms of money. So anytime you see the word financial capital, think of money. So what gives money its price? Well, that's a little bit tricky, but we like to say that the interest rate gives money the price. Because here's the deal. If you put money in the bank, right, they pay you an interest rate. So because you're selling your money to the bank, they give you money, right? And the money that they give you is the interest. So interest is that price of money. Okay? If you wanted to borrow money from somebody, they're going to like, okay, I'm going to charge you interest for it, right? What are they doing? They're charging you a price for the money. So money has a price, and we like to say that price is the interest rate. What is the interest rate? The interest rate is going to be basically a percentage of the interest rate is going to be a percentage of the amount of money. So basically 5% interest on $100, that is basically saying you owe me $5. So how we would determine that is if I said I need $100 from you and you said 5% is the interest rate. So I owe you 5%, right? So that's how much I am paying you to give me $100. So if I borrow the $100 today, I have it. I use it for whatever I want, okay? But I still owe you the $100 and 5%. So here's how we do it. You're going to multiply these two numbers here. You're going to do the amount times the interest rate. So that would be 100 times 0.05. If you're confused, it is not times 5. It is times 0.05 because 0.05 is 5%. If you did this, this equals $5. So after a couple of weeks, I come back to you. I'm going to give you the $100 that I owe you, and I need to give you $5. So I pay for the borrowing. So the interest rate is going to be telling you how much I owe you, such as $5. This is a little thing called simple interest. The reason it's called simple interest is because it is simple. We'll eventually get into compounding interest later. That's where it gets really, really interesting. But that's the basic idea behind the interest, is like if the interest rate were 7%, you would do the same thing. You would multiply the amount times the interest rate, and that's how much interest you have. So this is your interest. Now, who is supplying the financial capital? Like, where are we getting this money from? And that is going to be from savers. So the way I like to think about financial markets, I like to think of this as the bank. Because where do I store my money? Not underneath my mattress. I store it at the bank. Just so you know, I store it at the bank. And the reason I store it at the bank is because why? Because if I store it at the bank, they're going to pay me the interest rate for it. So I will be supplying my money at the bank. So I'm saving my money, and by saving it, I am supplying financial capital. Now, why else would you go to the bank? A lot of people go to the bank to get a loan, or maybe they are borrowing money for something else. Okay, so the demanders of financial capital, that's going to be the people that are borrowing. Okay, so we call these borrowers, people that are borrowing money. So people that are saving money collect a rate of return. Basically, the simple example where you gave me $100, and now how much money do you have now? You now have 105. So we turned $100 into 105. So because that happened, you can now have a rate of return. Like you earned money for your money. This is a rate of return. Now, borrowers must pay this rate of return or the interest rate for borrowing money today and paying it back later. This happens a lot with credit cards, because here's how a credit card works if you don't know. Every time you swipe your card, right? So like if I went to Whataburger, right, and I spend $10 there, and then I go to Walmart and I spend $100 there, and then I go to back to Whataburger because I'm still hungry. Now I'm doing $20, right? Where am I getting this money from every time I use the credit card? Well, I'm getting this money from the credit company. So the company is paying for this stuff for me. Okay? So if I'm using it, right, I'm borrowing their money. Okay? So what does that mean? That means I owe them money. So I have to pay the interest rate, right? Because I'm borrowing money. And credit card companies will charge you somewhere between 12 to 18%. If you're wondering, like, oh, that's $12, that's $18. Well, imagine that times 10, because a lot of people will spend like $1,000, $5,000 on stuff in a month. So take $5,000 and multiply it by 12%. You're getting up there in terms of interest. So that's how credit cards work. The only way you could avoid the interest rate is where you don't owe them money. So what happens here is at the end of the month, they're going to tell me, you owe us $130. So at $130, okay, fine, I'll pay you $130. No interest there. But let's say I didn't have the $130. So I say, okay, next month I'll pay you $130. So then the credit card company's like, okay, no problem. You owe us $130 plus 15%. Okay. And what about next month? Are you not going to buy Whataburger or Walmart next month? Probably not. You probably will spend another $130. So now you better have $260 plus the interest if you want to pay 0% interest. So that's where a lot of people get caught up in credit card debt, is because they can never get caught back up, because you're always spending money on stuff, and then you get paid the interest rate, and the interest rate is really, really high. So that's how credit cards work. Make sure you always pay the balance. That's the key thing. Pay the balance. Okay? If you owe $100, pay the $100. Okay? That way you don't have to pay extra money for borrowing. And sometimes people don't like how high the interest rate is. So guess what the government will do? They will create a thing called a price ceiling, such as a usury law. All right? Right here. Or, yes. So this is a maximum price on a interest rate. So this law could be 30%. Okay? But does that help you in the credit card situation? Think about it. If the highest you can go is 30%, but credit card companies are doing 12 to 18%, can they do that? Yes, they can charge you 12 to 18% because it's below the price ceiling. So these really don't help you out as much, but they will protect you for anything above 30%. So, this really doesn't, the price ceiling here doesn't really help you out, but how you can help yourself out is if you don't pay the interest rate for credit cards. Now you will be having to um, be buying loans and things like that, so you will have to pay an interest rate. Like if you wanted a house, do you have $400,000 today? Probably not. So you would go to the bank and you would demand to borrow money. So then you would get your $400,000 and you pay the interest rate. And if you're more interested about what that would look like, I'll be happy to show you. So let's take a look at the market for financial capital. Notice that it is the same with demand and supply. Downward sloping demand, upward sloping supply. Now, why is that? Because as a demander, right, if you are trying to borrow money, if the interest rate is higher, okay, then you don't want to borrow a lot of money, because the more money you borrow, the more interest you have to pay. That's extra money. Not a good idea. So as the interest rate goes higher, you're more likely to demand less quantity. Okay, so quantity demanded at higher interest rates will go down. What about supply? If the interest rate were higher, okay, I could earn more money by putting it in the bank. So what would I do? I would probably put more money in the bank if the bank were going to pay me more. So that's the law of supply. At a higher interest rate, I would do more quantity supplied. So here we go. At higher interest rates, I'm doing more quantity supplied. So that's why supply is upward sloping. So everything else about the market graph still applies. So the market will go to equilibrium every time. Now, if the interest rate is too high, well, less people are going to want to demand less people are going to be borrowing that amount of money, and we're going to have more people that are going to be supplying their money. So we're going to have surplus. And because there's a surplus, we're going to have a decrease in the interest rate. And the same thing with a shortage, the same idea there. Okay, so nothing about that changes in the sense of demand and supply. But let me ask you, at a rate of 21% interest rate, what is the surplus or shortage? So if the rate were 21%, is that a surplus or a shortage? Well, it's up here. So that would mean here's your quantity demanded, here's your quantity supplied. So we have more supply than demand. That has to be a surplus. So how much of a surplus is it? Well, that looks like 425, and that looks like 700. If you thought different numbers, then put the different numbers. But I'm thinking that's 425 and 700. So what is the surplus? Well, we have $700 billion in the bank, but we only have 425 billion that's being borrowed. So we're having a surplus of 275 billion. So the surplus here is 275 billion. If you're wondering where the billion's coming from, it's right here. Quantity in billions of dollars. What about a rate of 15%? Is there a surplus or a shortage there? I'm sorry. Okay, what about a rate of 15%? What happened there? Well, right here, if I go straight across, that's at equilibrium. And so is there a surplus or a shortage there? Neither. You're at equilibrium. And at 13%. So at 13%, we're now down here. So now we are right here. So this is your quantity demanded. Here's your quantity supplied. And so what's happening here? This looks about 500, and that looks about 650. If you agree with me, that's perfectly fine. But what is the surplus or shortage? Are we having too much demand or too much supply? Right here, because it's lower, we're having more people demanding financial capital than supplying it. So we would have a shortage. And how much is the shortage? We have 650 billions of dollars being as a quantity demanded, but we only have 500 in the bank. So we're going to have a shortage of 150 billion. So that's how we find the surplus and the shortage. We find where is the quantity demanded and supplied, and then we can figure out what is the difference there. So let's talk a quick thing about shifts in demand and supply. All of these go back to your intertemporal decision making. So the basic thing is this: do you want to consume now or later? Because if you're consuming now, you need money. So you cannot be saving it if you are using it. Now, what if you decided to use your money tomorrow? So how can you use your money tomorrow? You save it. You save it today by using it tomorrow. So that is intertemporal decision making, in the fact that you will be deciding whether or not to be buying today or tomorrow. So, for example, in the technological boom of the late 1990s, many businesses became extremely confident that investments in new technology would have a high rate of return. So they would earn a lot more money on these investments. So a higher interest rate, they would earn more money for it. So their demand for financial capital shifted to the right. So why this happened was that they wanted to invest in the new technology. How can you invest in something? You need money to invest into it. So you would demand more money today to use it for technology. So by doing that, you're able to demand more financial capital, and that means that you are increasing your decision to use money today, right? So that goes back to your intertemporal decision making. You are deciding right now to use money today, so you're going to be demanding it more today. What about college? Right? Many people will have to make that decision about, okay, if I want to go to college, what do I need to do today? I need the money today, so I borrow money so I can use it for college. What are you doing by demanding more money today? That means you are saving tomorrow, correct? Because if you use money today, you are paying back the interest rate. So in the future, you can use it to earn back some of that money. So by you spending the money today, eventually you will be able to save it tomorrow. That's the thinking. What about foreign countries? What would they do? Because this also happens. This is kind of from a macro perspective, but it does happen. If you had a country that was paying a higher interest rate for saving money over there, what would businesses and other countries start doing? People like money, so if the interest rate were higher over there, they would definitely put their money over there. So the demand for that financial capital would increase. But what about, let's say, in the United States? So if the interest rates are higher in Mexico, okay, people are going over here. Is anybody over here? No. So what happened to the demand for the U.S. financial capital? If you're putting your money over there, what happened to the demand here? Demand has to go down. So when you're making these decisions, you are trying to figure out, where do you want your money? Do you want it today or tomorrow? If you want your money today, right, so you can use it for something, then you're going to demand more today. If you would rather have the money tomorrow, which means you're saving today, that would mean either demand goes down or supply goes up. So depending on the situation. So if you had an increase in your income, but you would rather save it for a house, right, then that would increase the money you put in the bank, which would increase your savings. If we had a situation where the economy is bad and you don't want to buy any houses right now, so you're not demanding a loan, well, guess what? Demand will go down. So it really depends on the situation in terms of demand or supply. So I like to make it simple. Are you going to the bank more to put your money in, or are you going more to the bank to pull money out? So that's really going to help you out in terms of making these decisions. So if your income goes up and you're trying to save more money, that's going to be an increase in supply. If you have a good investment opportunity, then you're going to want more money to use for the investment. So you could be demanding more from a loan. If the question was you are using your savings for the investment, right? Are you using your money or are you using the bank's money? You're going to be using your money, so that would be decreasing the supply. So again, it goes back to what are you doing at the bank? Are you using their money, your money? And what are you doing with your money? So that's how we will shift the demand and supply for financial capital. Again, I like to think about it as the bank and what we're doing there. Finally, if foreign countries, okay, if I am demanding to put my money in Mexico, right, I am demanding less here. Now, if I'm demanding less here, right, then that would decrease the demand, or I could be using my savings over there. So it's going to be pretty obvious in the question about which one is it, demand or supply. Whatever makes sense. So if it's an open response question and you can explain to me why it would be supply down or why would it be demand down, right? If I can see your thinking behind it, I'll give you points for it because it's correct, right? It be just, if it makes sense to you, of like, well, because they're using their money from their bank account to put it over there, decrease supply and increase the demand over there. If you are trying to not demand more money here because you're demanding more money over there, that's different. So if you can explain your case, that might help. That will help you out if you understand what's going on there. Okay. So the textbook would have a little bit more reading if you want to read more about that. In the next video, I'll talk about section 4.3. Okay. I'll see you there.